What if the movies that failed the loudest ended up echoing the longest? Some of the greatest war films didn't march into success, they crawled out of disaster. Critics mocked them, audiences ignored them, and studios buried them. Yet years later, those same flops are worshipped by film fans who finally saw what the world missed. From misunderstood masterpieces to battlefield misfires reborn as cult legends, these are 15 war films that bombed but refused to die quietly. The Big Red One, 1980. It's rare that a director fights in a war then films the one he lived through. Samuel Fuller did both. The Big Red One wasn't just another World War II epic, it was Fuller's own haunted diary on celluloid. But when it premiered in 1980, it was gutted by studio cuts that hacked nearly half the story out. The studio wanted a tidy commercial action flick. What Fuller gave them was raw, messy truth soldiers who killed, laughed, and broke under the weight of endless marching. Audiences didn't know what to make of it. It tanked. Critics were confused. But decades later, film historians restored Fuller's original vision, and suddenly the fog lifted. The restored cut revealed not a failed war movie, but a masterpiece of exhaustion and survival. Lee Marvin's hardened sergeant and Mark Hamill's wide-eyed rookie became tragic mirrors of war's cost. The Big Red One is now studied in film schools and praised by directors like Quentin Tarantino. It didn't explode at the box office, it detonated decades later when people were finally ready to see war the way Fuller lived it. With no glory, no victory, just endurance. Sometimes a film has to lose before it earns respect. Cross of Iron, 1977. Sam Peckinpah wasn't known for subtlety. The man behind The Wild Bunch brought his trademark grit to Cross of Iron, a World War II story told through the eyes of German soldiers on the Eastern Front. It was daring, grim, and deeply uncomfortable for audiences used to black and white heroics. Released in 1977, the film was shot under financial strain and barely marketed. When it hit theaters, it stumbled too bleak, too violent, too un-American for mainstream tastes. Yet beneath the chaos, Cross of Iron burned with a strange poetry. James Coburn's weary corporal despises both his commanding officer and the futility of the war itself. It's a film about pride, class, and moral exhaustion dressed in mud and gunfire. Peckinpah, already battling studios and his own demons, crafted something brutally honest. It bombed hard, but Europe got it. German audiences embraced its rawness. Over time, cinephiles followed. Today, it's hailed as one of the most authentic depictions of Eastern Front warfare ever filmed. Quentin Tarantino once said he admired its unflinching tone, and it's easy to see why. Cross of Iron didn't aim to entertain, it aimed to wound, and in doing so it earned immortality. Tora, 1970. When Tora premiered, audiences expected a patriotic blockbuster. What they got instead was a history lesson, accurate, balanced, and almost documentary-like in its precision. Released in 1970, this joint American-Japanese production told the story of Pearl Harbor from both sides with 2 crews, 2 directors, and 1 massive budget. The result? A box office disaster in the U.S. Critics called it cold and emotionless. But here's the twist. Japan loved it. For the first time, a Hollywood film treated Japanese perspectives with respect. Decades later, historians and military analysts praised its accuracy, calling it one of the most authentic depictions of the lead-up to the attack ever filmed. It didn't rely on sentiment, it relied on facts, detail, and craft. Today, Tora stands tall as a cult classic among war film purists. Its model work, battle staging, and even the title taken from the Japanese code word for a successful strike have become iconic. What once bored moviegoers now fascinates YouTube historians. Sometimes the movies that fail at the box office are just waiting for the right audience to be born. Empire of the Sun, 1987. Before Spielberg became a household name for adventure, he made one of the most emotionally complex war dramas ever filmed, and nobody cared. Empire of the Sun, released in 1987, told the story of a British boy's survival in a Japanese internment camp during World War II. It was grand, tragic, and deeply personal, but audiences weren't ready for Spielberg without the comfort of optimism. The movie underperformed despite breathtaking cinematography, John Williams' score, and a breakout performance by young Christian Bale. Critics admired it but didn't quite know how to categorize it. Was it a war film, a coming-of-age story, or something in between? Time answered that question. Empire of the Sun aged like fine art. What once seemed detached now feels profound, an elegy for lost innocence and human endurance. Spielberg later called it one of his most personal works, and Bale's performance is now legendary. The film didn't make millions, but it made believers out of those who revisited it decades later. Empire of the Sun proves that a box office failure can still rise, just like the boy who learned to find beauty amid ruin. The Beast of War, 1988. In the late 80s, war movies were either heroic or tragic. The Beast of War was neither. Set during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, it told the story of a lost tank crew hunted through the desert by rebels. But the twist, it was told from the Soviet side, and American audiences didn't know what to do with that. Released in 1988, the film barely got a release. It vanished almost instantly. Yet those who found it mostly through late-night cable and early VHS couldn't believe what they were watching. It was brutal, introspective, and strange. George Zunza and Jason Patric delivered powerhouse performances, and the Afghan desert became a moral maze where loyalty, revenge, and survival blurred. Critics later rediscovered it and called it the best war movie you've never seen. Its claustrophobic tension inside the tank, its haunting silence in the desert, it all built a sense of dread few war films have matched. Today, The Beast of War enjoys cult status online, especially among military historians and film fans who crave authenticity over heroism. It bombed when it arrived, but decades later it's roaring again. Stalingrad, 1993. Few films have captured the nightmare of the Eastern Front like Stalingrad. Released in 1993, this German production was ambitious, authentic, and emotionally devastating. But when it came out, audiences weren't ready for such unrelenting despair. Instead of heroism, the film delivered hopelessness. Instead of victory, it gave frostbite, starvation, and moral collapse. In Germany, it earned respect, but not profit. In the U.S., it barely made a dent. The movie follows a platoon of German soldiers trapped in the frozen ruins of Stalingrad. There are no grand speeches, just coughing snow and death creeping closer with every scene. Director Joseph Vilsmeyer refused to sugarcoat anything. The result was a war film that felt like a fever dream, muddy, chaotic, and honest to a fault. Critics admired its realism but warned it was too grim for mass audiences. Yet that grimness became its strength. Over time, Stalingrad earned a reputation among war film devotees as one of the most authentic portrayals of the Eastern Front ever made. It's now studied for its cinematography and psychological depth, influencing later films like Enemy at the Gates. What once chilled audiences into silence now commands reverence. Sometimes authenticity needs time to thaw into appreciation. The Thin Red Line, 1998. Terrence Malick doesn't make war movies, he makes visual poems. The Thin Red Line arrived in 1998, the same year as Saving Private Ryan. Spielberg's film got the spotlight. Malick's got confusion. Audiences expecting action got introspection. Soldiers mused about life, nature, and eternity between battles. Viewers were baffled, and it underperformed despite an all-star cast featuring Sean Penn, Jim Caviezel, and Nick Nolte. But look deeper and The Thin Red Line reveals its brilliance. Malick turned the Battle of Guadalcanal into a philosophical battlefield where men fight not just enemies but their own souls. The film's visuals, bathed in golden light and whispered narration, gave war a haunting beauty. Some critics dismissed it as pretentious, but others years later called it one of the most spiritual and human war films ever made. Today it's revered for its cinematography, editing, and emotional weight. It's taught in film schools, quoted by directors, and revisited by fans who see new meanings with each viewing. The Thin Red Line didn't just bomb, it blossomed in silence. Its quiet power outlived every explosion that overshadowed it. Miracle at St. Anna, 2008. When Spike Lee released Miracle at St. Anna, critics expected another Do the Right Thing. What they got was a complex World War II drama about African American soldiers fighting prejudice on two fronts: the battlefield and their own army. Released in 2008, the movie flopped financially and was misunderstood critically. Many dismissed it as unfocused, but few noticed its courage. The film follows four members of the all-black 92nd Infantry Division stranded in a Tuscan village. Lee weaves past and present racism and redemption, faith and betrayal, all under the weight of forgotten history. It's not a traditional war film. It's a reclamation of one. The director wanted to tell a story Hollywood never had the sacrifice of black soldiers erased from textbooks. Years later, people revisited it with fresh eyes. Now, historians and critics appreciate its ambition, calling it messy but vital. Its humanity, especially in scenes between the soldiers and Italian villagers, glows through the chaos. Miracle at St. Anna may not have conquered the box office, but it conquered time, earning respect as a flawed but fearless gem. G.I. Jane, 1997. Before empowerment was mainstream, G.I. Jane tried to shout it through gunsmoke and grit. Ridley Scott's 1997 film starred Demi Moore as a naval officer candidate enduring brutal military training. It was marketed as a female Rambo spectacle, and that's where it stumbled. Critics mocked it, audiences ignored it, and it bombed hard. But here's the thing. Underneath the flashy marketing was a tough, layered story about perseverance and gender bias. Demi Moore gave one of her boldest performances, transforming from a Hollywood starlet into a symbol of resilience. The film's authenticity in portraying training sequences was staggering. Even military consultants praised its realism. Years later, G.I. Jane became something of a cult anthem. It's been reclaimed as a feminist touchstone, admired for its raw energy and emotional drive. The same movie that critics laughed at now gets standing ovations at retrospectives. Ridley Scott once said audiences didn't know what to do with a woman like that. He was right. They just needed 20 years to catch up. The Alamo, 2004. Disney's The Alamo from 2004 was supposed to be an epic. Instead, it became a headline for financial disaster. The production went over budget, lost its original director, and when it finally hit theaters, it barely made back a fraction of its cost. Critics called it dull, audiences called it confusing. But the film's heart was in the right place. Unlike earlier versions, this Alamo focused less on glory and more on the human cost of defiance. Billy Bob Thornton's portrayal of Davy Crockett wasn't mythic, it was mortal. The film's slower pacing, moody score, and dusty authenticity gave it emotional honesty. But honesty doesn't always sell tickets. Over time, film historians revisited it and found depth in what once seemed flat. Its commitment to historical detail and nuanced performances gained appreciation among enthusiasts of American history. It's not a Friday night popcorn movie, it's a melancholy ballad of courage and consequence. The Alamo failed loud, but it left behind echoes that quietly grew louder with time. Inchon, 1981. Inchon is often called one of the biggest flops in movie history, and that's not wrong. Released in 1981, this Korean War epic starring Laurence Olivier and Jacqueline Bisset was a colossal gamble. It suffered from production chaos, political controversy, and a bloated budget. When it finally reached theaters, critics tore it apart. Audiences stayed home. Yet somehow this disaster became fascinating. Its ambitious scale, lavish sets, and strangely earnest tone turned it into a curio, so bad it's mesmerizing experience for cult audiences. Film students and collectors kept it alive through rare screenings and underground tape swaps. It became the war movie equivalent of a myth too big to ignore, too flawed to dismiss. Today, Inchon is appreciated for what it tried to do, not what it achieved. It reminds us that even failure can be cinematic if the attempt is bold enough. It's a cautionary tale and a time capsule rolled into one, a movie that missed every target but somehow still made history. Redacted, 2007. When Brian De Palma, yes, the same director behind Scarface and The Untouchables, decided to make a war film, nobody expected this. Redacted, released in 2007, was raw, unconventional, and filmed like a collage of online footage and news clips. It didn't have explosions or heroes, it had confusion, moral conflict, and uncomfortable realism. Audiences walked out. Critics called it disjointed. The film barely made money. But underneath the shaky camera work was a daring idea, to show modern warfare the way it actually looked, fragmented, uncertain, and filtered through 1,000 screens. De Palma wasn't making a blockbuster. He was making a mirror. In hindsight, that's what made it ahead of its time. It predicted how future conflicts would be seen through handheld cameras, live streams, and the constant noise of information. Over the years, Redacted gained a small but passionate following of film students and war journalists who saw genius in its chaos. They called it a document of the digital battlefield. It may have bombed, but it hit a nerve that still throbs in today's media age. Redacted didn't entertain, it provoked. And sometimes provocation is the point. The 13th. Warrior, 1999. Few flops are as legendary as The 13th Warrior. Based on Michael Crichton's novel Eaters of the Dead and starring Antonio Banderas, this historical war adventure was supposed to be an epic hit. Instead, it became a case study in Hollywood excess. Released in 1999, it went through endless rewrites, reshoots, and editing battles. By the time it reached audiences, it was a shadow of its original vision and a financial nightmare. But give it a rewatch and you'll see something special. The story of an exiled Arab ambassador joining Norse warriors against mysterious raiders plays like a dark, mythic dream. Its atmosphere, music, and rugged authenticity create a world that feels ancient and immersive. Audiences at the time didn't get it, but fans later did. Over the years, The 13th Warrior has earned cult status as one of the most underrated historical action films ever made. Online forums still debate its lost director's cut, and its influence can be spotted in later medieval epics. It's proof that chaos can sometimes birth beauty. It may have been a box office disaster, but artistically it became legend. War Dogs, 2016. Technically more a modern war satire than a frontline story. War Dogs had everything going for it. Jonah Hill, Miles Teller, and director Todd Phillips hot off The Hangover. But when it landed in 2016, the marketing couldn't decide what it was, a comedy, a biopic, or a cautionary tale. It underperformed, earning mixed reviews. And yet that confusion turned into fascination. Viewers who discovered it later on streaming found a razor-sharp story about ambition, greed, and the absurdity of business in wartime. The film's tone, half dark comedy, half moral parable, slowly clicked with modern audiences. Jonah Hill's performance in particular became a meme factory, spawning countless internet edits and fan tributes. Over time, War Dogs carved out its own little cult following. It's now quoted in motivational videos, dissected in business classes, and rewatched by fans who love its energy and swagger. It bombed on release, but it aged into relevance like a risky deal that finally paid off. The Big Red One. The Reconstruction, 2004. Yes, we started with The Big Red One, but its second life deserves its own spotlight. After Samuel Fuller's death film, historians restored his original cut in 2004, adding 47 minutes of lost footage. The difference was staggering. The new version turned what was once a butchered studio casualty into a masterpiece of human endurance. When it re-released, critics hailed it as one of the greatest war films ever made. Fuller's vision finally shone through the exhaustion, the small victories, the absurd humor that soldiers used to survive. What had once been dismissed as uneven now felt deeply personal. Fans discovered it anew, and suddenly this forgotten war film had become sacred ground for cinephiles. The restored Big Red One didn't just fix a movie, it restored a legacy. It proved that sometimes the world has to catch up to the artist. And when it does, failure transforms into myth. So what do all these films have in common? They didn't win the box office, but they won something bigger: time. Each one dared to break the mold, to tell war stories that weren't tidy or triumphant, and though they were buried by critics and crowds, they rose again through passion, patience, and pure persistence. Which of these cult war films do you think deserved more love? Drop your pick in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more forgotten legends of cinema reborn.